Welcome to the Professor Stu Boys channel. This is Professor Victoria with the second video for the analysis of the copper complex lab. And the last analysis that we have to do is for the ammonia ligand as part of the copper complex. We're going to determine the amount of ammonia through titration. Ammonia is a weak base, and we're going to be titrating with the strong acid of hydrochloric acid. Here's some data that you're going to need, so you can jot that down, and I will go right into showing you what this looks like in the lab. So we have a titration set up. That's the molarity of the acid that we're using. That's what's in the burette. So our samples, our copper complex, are in these beakers, and the orange one, the one that he's touching right now, he's already titrated that, and that's a little bit past the end point. That yellow sample is one that he's already titrated partially, and he's kind of in the midpoint of the titration. I'm going to show you a full titration start to finish, so you'll be able to record your observations. But the one on the far left here is the trial 3, and that's the one I'm going to show you the full titration for. Our Mr. Davis is chemist extraordinaire, so he's also putting a pH probe in for this titration. It's not part of the lab, it's additional information, just kind of interesting. So I'm going to zoom it up to here, and we're going to watch the titration of the final sample. So right there, he's just set the burette to an initial volume that he's read, and now he's starting to add the hydrochloric acid and just stirring with that pH meter. So you can see the color is very, very dark blue there when we start, almost purple. You can disregard the data that he has written on the piece of paper. The data that I just showed you is the data that you'll be using. He's got a couple different things going there, so I'll show you that at the end as well. But you can see that we have, we're changing color a little bit. We've formed a precipitate, and if you read the lab, you should be reading the lab through before even watching this, but you know that the endpoint that we're looking for is just after that precipitate disappears. So this methyl orange is going to go through a series of color changes, and you can see that now. Look at that. We've got some yellow, it's turned to green, it's still cloudy. So Mr. Davis is still titrating. It's going to start going a little bit slower now. You can see the transition of all the different colors. Starting to see a little bit of that orange. And the end point is right after the precipitate disappears, and it's kind of an orange red color. So if you look on the side here, I think you can see my cursor, the trial 1 was too far, and then trial 2 is at his end point. So we're giving you the data for the second trial and the third trial. And we have that a little bit more exact numbers, what I showed you. So there it is. We've got our 2 endpoints. So our data, again, is here. So we have the mass of our sample. That's the blue stuff. That's our copper complex. And then the added HCl, that's how much it needed to come to the end point, or the equivalence point, or the neutralization point of all of that ammonia. So you're going to use these data to complete your lab, and that's all the data that you need for now. Thank you so much for listening, and happy writing up the lab.